Please welcome to the stage our moderator for tonight, KTLA film critic Scott Mantz. Hey everybody.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight to see The Novice on the big screen. What did you think of this movie? Wow, right? I came in, just like watch this again, and I just totally got riveted. So this movie back earlier this year at the Tribeca Film Festival won Best U.S. Narrative Feature, Best Cinematography, and Best Actress, and on top of that, just earlier this week, it was nominated for 5 Independent Spirit Awards, including Best Feature, Editing, Supporting Actress, Director, and Female Lead. So please welcome to the stage here, writer, director, and Spirit Award nominee Lauren Hadaway. And please welcome to the stage, lead actress Isabelle Fuhrman. So did you just sit through the movie again tonight?
Yeah, I watched it like 30 minutes in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like the millionth time I've seen it, but it's cool to see it and hear people's reactions to it. This is like, I think, other than Tribeca and Outfest.
Yeah, no, I walked in the last 20 minutes. I loved everyone laughing when she's like, "Is there a record?" And everyone
what is it like, especially because you haven't sat through it so many times now, to sit through it again? And like, what do you discover about your performance when you're watching it on a big screen?
I mean, I see different things. I mean, it's hard when you watch a movie that I'm so proud of this film. Every time I watch it, I see something different about the film and the story itself.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there are things like I can nitpick on, but I try not to do that, and I try to just enjoy it. And Lauren made a fucking amazing movie, and I still am like, yeah, we did that. That's crazy.
So when you got the reaction that you got from Tribeca and then this past week, how do you feel? Like, how does that make you feel? Like, it's your first feature and it's...
Well, it's probably a little bit just watching. I'm glad I actually watched the last 20 minutes of it again. But at the end when she's writing her name on the board and then she's doing this whole thing and she has this moment of like, I fucking did it and I got the satisfaction, and then it's the now what's next situation. So it's a mix of this bittersweet thing. I'm trying to be very in the moment and enjoy it. But it's great, especially after doing post-production in my kitchen for a fucking year during the pandemic, not knowing if film festivals were gonna exist, and my roommate's a fucking witch, very LA, cooking potions behind me. And like, we were manifesting shit on the mountain. I was like, I'll do anything, let's fucking do it. So yeah, this has been great. It's great.
What was your first reaction when you read the screenplay? Like, how badly did you want this role? And what did you do to get it?
Desperately wanted this role. I mean, I so wanted this role. This is the type of role that like you wish and dream of, that you manifest on the top of a mountain, and it's funny, I wanted to be in like a superhero movie, and I read this and I was like, this is my superhero movie. I'm not even kidding. Because Lauren even wrote, she had this lookbook that she sent along with the script that said like, Alex is a conquistador, like she conquers everything that she sets her mind to, like she conquers the sport, and I was like, yeah, I could do this. So I went above and beyond in my audition. I mean, like I sent 2 scenes to Lauren, not just the scene that they sent, I also taped the scene after the seat race when Jamie confronts Alex in the hallway.
Which I should say, because I sent 2 scenes to the casting directors to cast, and everyone only sent back 1 scene. I was like, what the fuck, these lazy fucks? And then Isabelle sent back the 2, the only one out of everyone. I found out later the casting directors only sent out the 1 scene, and this person intuitively chose the other scene. So anyways, continue.
Yeah, no, I wanted to take a crack at it, and then I also wrote Lauren a letter, not about acting, but or about the movie, honestly, but about running. I had run a relay race from Santa Monica to Vegas that year, and I had run 60 miles of it. It was a relay race. We were like a team of 8, and I wrote an entire letter to Lauren about how I understood what it was like to have a team rely on you, what it was like to wake up in the morning and work out for hours and push through pain and injuries. I sent her like pictures of me crying in the back of this car. I also broke my wrist like a week before the race, so I ran to Vegas with a cast on my wrist too. Yeah, and I basically wanted her to know that I knew how physically demanding this role was, and I knew that they weren't just looking for somebody who could be a great actress and carry the movie, but they needed someone who could physically rise to the challenge and meet the demands of this movie. And I wanted her to know that it was only me, and it could only be me. She better hire me.
That's very Alex, by the way.
Just a little bit.
Was Alex the first role that you cast, and how did you come to cast everyone else in the film?
Actually, we had Amy on before, and the thing is, because look, I didn't come from a background in a lot of shorts and music videos and this and that. Like, I didn't have the casting experience, and so I was actually at a Q&A, somewhat like this, seeing Gone Girl, and David Fincher said this thing about casting that movie, that he tried to look at who the core of the actor was, like, because at the end of a 15-hour day, Ben Affleck's not this dude, he's fucking Ben Affleck, and Rosamund Pike is this person, and he thought she was ethereal, and this, like, he couldn't figure her out, and so that was perfect for that crazy role. And I took that advice here, and, she's already gone to the letter and the try hard to things, and all of this, and the physicality, like, all of that was very her, and so that fit. But like, we cast her when we were greenlit. We had like, it was like, we gotta fucking find our Alex. But Amy had been on, I had known her for years. I'd seen her like on, when I first wrote the script, I started watching all these like teen things with teen actors and then just to get to know who existed. And I actually had Amy on my radar. But the thing about Amy, like everything that she's done, is she plays Jamie. Before this has been very kind of like good girl, sweet, so I knew she was a good actress and she did a tape, and I was like, I don't know, can she do this role? And so I took that advice to heart too, and I went and stalked her on Instagram. And Amy has the like weirdest fucking Instagram, and there's like puzzles and these weird photos, and like just doesn't give a fuck. And then so I was like, okay, maybe this could work. Like she could bring something to this role beyond like what I imagined. And then we met in real life and we talked for hours talking about all kinds of crazy shit, and that was how she came along. And then actually Stallone, this is her first ever movie, plays Danny, and that was the very...
She's here tonight.
Is she? Where's she at? Somewhere.
Yeah! There she is!
Why is it all like that?
She's seen this movie a few times too, but her audition came in very, 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 it was like past the deadline actually, which is very Delone, rolling in 5 minutes late. But she like, all these other auditions came in and nothing was right, and that role was so specific. There's something so specific I wanted with the energy of the character and the warmth and just everything, and like none of them were right. And I remember like really being fucked up over like, who the fuck's gonna be this role? And then I get this email from my casting director, who's like, we got this thing coming in, I think you're gonna be really excited. And I was like, okay, I'll believe it when I fucking see it. And I waited the whole day to watch the tape because I was ready to be disappointed. Like, this is gonna suck, and then we're not gonna have I'm gonna have to choose one of these people who's not gonna be it. And I watched the tape and I was like, holy fuck, this is it. And I don't remember what you did in your audition, but there was something she did that inspired me, and actually rewrote one of the scenes to include that detail. But anyways, that's the casting gist.
So the casting did influence the evolution of the screenplay further.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Even watching the last 20 minutes of that, I was like, what, the fight in the bathroom, the line like, maybe if you practice harder, you wouldn't be just an opener. that was ad-lib in there. There was only one take of that. Like that kind of stuff was ad-lib. But yeah, you discover things, and the location too. Like that was nothing like I imagined. And when we found that location, I was like, holy fuck! Like this place is insane. Only Canadians could possibly go to school here and not like go insane. And like it's literally a nuclear bunker. The lecture hall we shot in, like everything is concrete. This like brutalist architecture. This dude on a hill designing the school, dropping fucking acid in the 60s, like insane. And so I rewrote the script to incorporate that too. And you just got to go with the flow. It's like film is, I feel like, a living kind of breathing organism, really.
Sure, absolutely. Because you grew up in the business, and because you grew up in acting, like what made Alex the right role at the right time, and what new challenges did that bring to you?
I mean, emotionally, this was, I think, the most difficult role that I've ever played. Also the physical exhaustion. Funny enough, I found Alex rowing on the water, training for this movie. Rowing for 6 hours every single day, starting at 4:30 in the morning for 6 weeks leading up to this movie. You really get to know who you are at a deep level, for sure. And I gained 12 pounds of muscle. I was like incredibly sore. I was going through a lot of similar things that Alex was. You know, my hands were blistering over and bleeding, and then the callus, and the callus was ripped off, and I really felt like I was living in this world of rowing and becoming obsessed with it in the same way that she does, because I really wanted to do a really good job. I was like, I don't want to show up and look like I have no clue what I'm fucking doing. And so in the preparation physically, I realized that my emotional state was so up and down, because like you're either hungry all the time, or you're exhausted, or you haven't slept enough, or your body hasn't recovered enough. And I found that was where I really kind of understood where Alex is in this kind of place where you feel incredibly strong, but also just so ripped open, like an open wound. And so, you know, I think I felt like I did a good job every single day, being like happy-go-lucky on set, because I knew this movie, like when there were so many things that went wrong, and I knew that if people looked at me and I was like, oh my God, everything's falling apart, that everything would fall apart. I think I learned that since I was, you know, young, being in the business, watching other actors. Like, the person who's number one on the call sheet, who's in every single frame, if they're having a shitty time, so is everybody else.
Oh, right. Wow.
So if they're having a good time and they're, you know, engaging with everyone and being nice to everybody, and even when things are going wrong, they're still like stepping up to the plate with a smile on their face and getting shit done, everybody else responds around that, because
Absolutely.
they're like, oh, well, if she's okay, well then I guess we're not as bad as we thought. And so I tried to kind of differentiate between that and when the cameras were rolling, really kind of dropping into like how I actually felt. And really, you know, this film exhausted me on so many levels in a really wonderful way. I felt like I learned so much about myself through playing this character, and I also felt like I grew so much as a person. I just would go home from work and I would just, you know, I would make sausages. Actually, I would eat like a ton of food when I get home, and I would sit in the bath and I would just like, I would pour the hottest water imaginable, so it was so scalding hot. Just like lots of Epsom salt, and I would just kind of like either cry or like sit in silence, or just like have moments where I was like, you're okay, you're here, it's great. And then the next morning I'd wake up and be so excited for the day. I mean, I was so in love with the script and so like honored that Lauren chose me to be in this movie, that I felt every single day that I had such excitement and purpose in telling the story. Especially because I feel like the story is such a different way to tell a story about emotion, about grit and ambition, in a way that I hadn't read before or seen before. And I just wanted to be able to help facilitate, you know, Lauren's story. You know, she says that, you know, this movie was like her baby for 4 years, and I'm like, I was your doula, you know, I facilitate your baby, I facilitate your birth that you wanted.
I would love to hear how you found the right cinematographer and the right composer, because the music is amazing, and so is absolutely the cinematography.
The cinematography is interesting. Actually, Todd was someone, this is his first feature as well, and he had worked with one of my producers, and I was nervous about that, like to have a cinematographer also be his first feature, really hesitant, and was like looking kind of through everyone, whatever, and I kept coming back to his stuff that he had done, and like over and over and over, and just like looking at it, and nothing compared, and I was like, this is a guy. And then we would have these talks. He's just a huge fucking nerd and very like into all the details. And my background's in post-production sound. That's my first career. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome for a long time, because most people coming into film, they care about lenses and cameras and like that sexy airy body, you know, and they're talking about all this shit. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about any of this. I want it to look great. I know what I want it to look like. I don't know how to get there. And I like the technicals of that aspect never did it for me. I was always nerdy about sound. And so to find someone who was as nerdy about the lenses and the camera and the lights and when's the sun gonna be here and the data, and like thinking of all this nerdy shit, like that was like kismet. I was like, this is my guy, this is him. And so Todd, like he was one time I was like, Todd, you really like, there should be like a director of cinematography. He's like, it's the director of photography. But he was the director of photography. Like he took total control. He was hiring people, firing people, doing his whole thing, and like we had conversations and he went off and did things, and every now and then, you know, Justin chimed in, but he just fucking got it. And then the score, I mean, the 1960s love songs, some of those were even written into the script, and that was always kind of there, and I knew I wanted that. But the score was the last thing to come together, and that fucked me up bad. Like, I re-temp scored the film probably 3 or 4 times, which is an extremely laborious process, and nothing. We tried like very dark, droney music and even electronic, all these different versions of this. and nothing was right. And last year, I was learning French as a pandemic hobby, and to immerse myself in the language, I only listened to French music, only watched French films and TV, and it was supposed to be just 3 months because I was going to go to Paris summer 2020. That didn't fucking happen. So 3 months turned to 4, turned to 5, turned to 6, turned to, I was so sick of hearing the French fucking language that I put on this playlist of like movie soundtracks, and up pops this song from The Farewell, which if you know anything about the film, it is nothing like this. And suddenly I had the image, it's that like very vocal, simple soundtrack if anyone knows it, but the boat spinning with that. And like I was on my pandemic drive that I did probably 400 times last year, up the Angeles Crest Trail and like up this mountain with no cell service, and this song came on, I was like, holy fuck, it all clicked. I drove straight home. I cut like 7 minutes out of the film, which had been hovering at 100 minutes basically for the whole time. And then Retemp scored the entire film with all his stuff and wrote Alex Weston, the composer, this like really impassioned email like, you've inspired me at the 11th hour, and all the festival deadlines were coming up and all of that. And it was really like literally a week before that I discovered him, and
Wow.
he had nothing going on, so he's like, yeah, I'll fucking do it. And then, yeah, he was brilliant. He was working out of Maine, and I was in LA, and we just back and forth, and he's great. I'll work with both those guys till I die, I think.
You know, yesterday when we were doing a Q&A here last night too, you know, I could just tell that you two had like a really strong bond. I mean, it's so obvious. Actually, when I first got here and I was parking across the street, I see these two people like taking a picture in front of the marquee across the street. I'm like, what are they doing? And it was them. It was so charming. It was so like, you were so excited.
They're up on the Instagram if you want to see what he's talking about.
Like, when did you really, because I think in order for both of you to just like really crush it, knock it out of the park, you gotta have that bond, you gotta have that trust. How far into, not even the shoot, into the prep, into the development, early into the rehearsals, did you like go, yeah, I got you?
I mean, Lauren jokes that like, cause she's a Virgo and I'm a Pisces, and Todd, our DP, is also a Pisces, but it was like kind of match made in heaven for the three of us.
Those are, for most of you don't know anything about astrology, those are sister signs, just so you know, it's very important.
Yeah, and no, but really, I met Lauren and I had already fallen in love with the script. I'd already fallen in love with this image book, and I met her, and we didn't just talk about the movie. We talked about like dating. We talked about LA. We talked about life, and it really felt like I had met somebody that I could not only be friends with, but I would hang out with. And then when we started talking about the film, she was so specific about what she wanted, but in a really great way. Like I would say that, you know, great directors, what they do is they build this sort of like box that you can play in, and you have so many places that you can go within this box, and they trust you to play within this box, but they have to construct it for you first. And I felt like Lauren had kind of explained so much to me after we met for that coffee that I was like, I trust her, like I want to work with her. But for Lauren, it came later.
Well, I was actually thinking about this because you asked me this yesterday, and I was saying it was the moment, the first thing we shot was the porta potty scene. That was our Splinter Day, and I was saying that was the moment when the first take we did of that. And then I realized, like, I think I was actually having an existential crisis about this earlier, thinking about this actually, so I'm glad this question came up.
Oh.
Because I was like, that was the moment I felt okay, but I realized like I don't think I trusted myself until that moment, because until I could see that because we cast Isabelle basically off of 2 scenes that she auditioned in the meeting, and her neurotic energy that I really liked. So it wasn't like, it was a gamble basically, showing up in all of this. I knew she had done the training, but until I saw her in that porta potty do what you saw her do, I was nervous as fuck. And I think for me, it was about, did I make the right choice? Like, am I going to be able to direct this actor? Like, how much is she going to need to be coached? And realize like she has such command of the character already from the first moment that it wasn't going to be me having to like, it was going to be a collaboration and not like a, you know, poking someone with a stick, which sometimes you had to do on the ADR stage, which I've done in, you know, that's my first career. But that was for me, that's when I felt the trust. And maybe it was more trusting myself, as hokey and sentimental as that sounds. But no, she was like texting me from like 4:30 in the morning from the marina, asking me about her blisters. And I was in Canada at the time, so I was already up. So we had this whole like thing brewing, and no one on the crew besides me knew anything about rowing. So it was me kind of like giving her the pointers and talking about the training, and it was me coordinating the training with everyone in the marina, because I knew who the people were. I was coordinating all this shit, which was a nightmare, but you know, it worked out. So good job.
Thank you too. Good job.
So here's my question. So yesterday you said that you had 24 shooting days. Okay, so leading up to the shoot, you're like, okay, you're psyching yourself up to get in the character.
Jacked.
You're jacked. you're going deep, and you're in every scene. I mean, you're in every scene in this movie. And then you get to the last scene that you shot, which was what?
I think one of the last scenes was the bathroom scene. What was the last scene?
No, the last scene that we shot was when, when I'm wearing the cardigan and I'm sitting on the couch next to Delone, and I go, is this the line for the bathroom?
Yeah.
And she goes, no, and I go, okay. And I go, you don't date your students. She goes, you're not a student anymore. That was the last thing that we shot.
Yeah, what a way to end it too. Because I think the scene before that we shot was the bathroom scene. So we went from this like most emotional scene of the entire
That was
film.
the morning, yeah.
Where we were crying on the fucking floor.
We cried a lot.
Pathetic. And then to the evening to that fun scene. And like, it's nice.
I just remember being in hair and makeup and like we were still crying. Delone and I were still crying. Like we felt so emotional. They're like trying to make us look cute for like the dean's dinner and whatever. And we're just like, this is the last day, the most emotional scene in the movie we just filmed in the morning, and yeah, it was glorious. I mean, I just sobbed uncontrollably when we wrapped. I felt so close to everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I had really. I mean, especially Lauren and Todd. I mean, there were so many moments that it was. I mean, it was the three of us like in a bathroom, and I'm there in like stickers, which is, that's all you're wearing. And
Well, that's what I mean. Like when you get to a shoot after they're your family for however long you're making the movie, whether it's 24 days or 6 months. But so like the next day, like how do you sort of get out of being in that zone for so long?
I flew out that night, I remember. Yeah, I literally wrapped and got in a car and went straight to the airport. Because I had a couple projects after this. And so, it was funny. It's like, I totally, I slept for like 2 weeks after we wrapped this movie. I was so tired. But I was like already kind of on to the next thing emotionally, and it wasn't really until March when everything shut down that I kind of got to process what was going on. Because I want to apologize to anyone who worked on those two projects that I worked on after this, because I could not shut up about this movie. Because I had the best time. I felt like that girl in American Pie. I was like, this one time on that rowing movie, on this rowing movie that I did, people were like, oh yeah, I'm like, no, you'll see. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I knew I was going to crash, and we did 6 days a week, so on our off days, I was actually editing at this shitty, the Chili's of Peterborough, Ontario, basically, whatever they told me that is, like drinking beer and editing some of the scenes, and then so when we got back, the day I got back, I started editing immediately. I think I cut, was like 28 days straight to the first assembly, because we didn't have any money left. So it was like, well, I guess I'm gonna start editing this film. And I edited it in a Cafe Vita, actually walked by it today, rest in peace, on my laptop with headphones, with the hard drive. Cut the whole thing, the first assembly there, and then was going home at night after spending 12, 15-hour days, however long I was allowed to be there, basically. Then going home and watching it like a fucking, in the Aviator, Howard Hughes, when he's in the theater, like drinking milk and just watching shit, like, I was like sitting on the floor just drinking beer and like watching this movie on repeat in the dark all alone, like, I had a moment, and yeah, it was rough, but it's good. We're good.
You're fine.
Even after that, you were still collaborating on until you got to your final cut, right?
I mean, we did post in Lauren's house. I had to bring my dog, and Lauren had her dog, and then we were like separating the dog. We were where the dog's nails are going to be.
To record like the voiceover, we made like a couch cushion fort for the sounds, because I care about.
You can see it also on her Instagram.
Oh yeah, there's a whole post on that. But yeah, she came for that, and I was sending Isabelle cuts too, because it was important, which I don't think you were telling me.
I've never had that actually, ever. I've never worked with a director who sent me like her first assembly. I got to watch this movie from like the first time it was cut together through every single iteration, and it was cool because I actually felt like I felt like I was a part of the process, like throughout the entire thing. That we talked about it, we talked about things that worked, I told you when things didn't. But that was kind of our relationship on set. It was, we had a very great relationship where if I was like, Lauren, I have this idea, and she was like, no, I don't like it, it's like, okay, you just brush it off and you move on. There was like no ego.
But also too, if you had a lot of things you did in this elevated what was in my head completely and let you roll with it. And I think it's like this concept of you trust each other comes up so much, and what I think that really means for me is like, not being able to tell someone yes, do what you want, being able to tell someone no is like a really hard thing. Like that is really fucking hard, and I think anyone in this room could probably agree with that. But like to be able to say, you know what, no, let's do it my way, or give her, let them do a try and then it's not working and then redirect. But also if you have an idea that's fucking better, or you argue with me why, or you just elevate something, absolutely we're gonna go with that.
What makes Lauren a great actor's director?
Gosh, I would say that she's so real as a human being. Like, I think there are a lot of, I've worked with directors who are like that, very friendly with the cast and everything, and that's great. And then there's people who, kind of keep themselves removed and only kind of come in when they need to. And then there's some directors who don't even really direct actors. They're more concerned about everything else, and they just kind of let you do what you want. What I love about Lauren was like, she was constantly in the room. Like, there was never a moment that she wasn't just either behind the seat or around the corner, or like she was just there. And it was great because we could get into these really deep, emotional scenes, and then we could laugh and make jokes, and then she would be like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And I don't know, I just felt like she was such a real person. The way she explained everything really came from an open-hearted place. I mean, there were questions, Lauren has said this, that Alex is slightly a proxy of herself, of her younger self. And there were things that I couldn't personally relate to in the story that I didn't have anything to pull from. And to be able to pull Lauren aside and talk to her about those things, for her to be so open with me and honest about what that experience is like for her, that is really, trusting someone, getting to know someone, I love Lauren. I took a bath naked with a crab for Lauren. I would do anything for Lauren. I love Lauren.
Do you typically how many takes do you usually like to do in a scene?
I didn't have much time.
Some of the stuff, with the I always like to do at least 2. One time I was doing ADR with Ben Affleck, and he was like, he did 1, and I was like, can we get a safety? And he's like, you only can use 1, and I'm like, well, let's get a safety. And that's how I feel about this, is you always want a fucking safety take. But we didn't have that option with some of the rowing at the end, especially that final race we shot over the course of 3 days. The city opened the fucking dam to drain all the water out of the river for wintertime, and didn't tell us they were doing this. So there's 5 fucking boats getting sucked down the river, and you can see them all and they're wearing
5 girls in raven heads.
They're in masks, they're going backwards, it's cold, your hands are freezing, you've been out there for hours, there's the 5 boats in the shop, plus the camera boat, the sound boat, the light boat, the safety boat, the taxi boat, the houseboat, that I'm fucking on with a walkie and the other walkie, and everyone's got a walkie in their fucking boat, and no one can command the rowers except for me, because no one knows anything about how these fucking boats work. But we have the other, the coaches there or whatever, but it is utter chaos. So all of that is happening, and we knew from the beginning, the first thing we shot was the foggy row, which went beautifully, and me and Isabelle both thought oh well.
Is the first thing we shot.
Yeah, we're like, wow.
It was the most beautiful moment. I was like, wow, this movie's blessed. We're making magic here.
And then fast forward 2 hours later, and that fucking went out the window, and it was just utter hell for the next 23 days. But but after the clusterfuck of the first. After that first half of the day, the next 2 days were a disaster. And so Todd and I really sat down in the mornings and got exactly what we needed. We made a shot list for that last scene especially. When do we need the bow coming in here? We need to see this character looking off that direction. We need to establish the bow coming in there. Exactly what we needed to tell the story of this race. And when we got one take of that, we had to be like, okay, and just move the fuck on. And so that was the one scene where I was like, I fucking hope we did our preparation right, and I don't know if we got everything we needed. And let me tell you, I waited till towards the end to edit that because I was so fucking terrified. But it works, mostly.
So you finally locked your final cut, and you're like, okay, let's do this and let's put it out there, and you put it out there, and the reaction from Tribeca, as we know, got feature cinematography actress, and then just over the next few months, then we get to this point, and you get 5 Spirit Award nominations, reviews are great. So A, how proud are you of the film, and B, what is it about the film that you think everyone is really responding to?
I don't know what people are responding to per se. This is my obsessed artist trope film that I love, but I wanted to do a version of it where we're examining a character who's internally driven. There is no external stuff, which I know will probably frustrate some people, but that's what I wanted to explore. And I think too, the interesting thing that's come up, a couple interesting things have come up since this has come out that weren't, maybe not intentional, but they are very true, is I've had non-Americans describe how American this film is, because it's like the hustle culture and the like the sort of individuality of it. And Alex is not a good fucking teammate. She's the shittiest teammate ever. And like those kind of things, like they're very American qualities. And interesting, like doing this during the fucking pandemic. It's sort of making people, I think we're now evaluating work-life balance a lot more than we used to in an interesting way. So it kind of like, I mean, these are things that have come up since, but it's touching on those topics, and I you know, I think that it's timely in that regard. But yeah, I'm fucking so proud of this film. Reaction is great, and also thank you all for coming to watch this tonight instead of Spider-Man, because you know, appreciate it.
I'm so proud of this movie. I mean, Amy and I were texting earlier today, and we were like, our tiny little boat movie's not so tiny anymore.
No.
You know, because you know, we had such a small budget, we had such a short amount of time to make this, and we created something really special and amazing. And I mean, I was telling Lauren this yesterday after we left here, we went, you know, hung out. And I was saying that from the moment I read the script, I knew that this was something special. I really, really did, and I felt it, and I felt it throughout the time we were working on it, even when the city opened the dam, even when, you know, we were being stuck downstream, even when we were rained out and behind schedule. I mean, I knew that there was something really special about this, and I knew that Lauren was creating something so unique and so special, and that she was going to carry it through to the end and make something that would knock everybody's socks off, and that's what we've done together. I'm really proud of this movie, and thank you guys truly for coming. Not only because you guys blew off Spider-Man, but to come into a theater, especially right now, and to see this movie and be here with us. I mean, I love listening to everybody's reactions to it. It really, really means a lot. So thank you.
And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, what you have to do now is spread the word. And how do you spread a word about a movie these days? You go on social media. So go on Facebook. Go on Twitter, go on Instagram. You're in the back. If you're still using MySpace, it's totally fine. Whatever works, or Friendster.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Letterboxd.
But, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for being here. Spread the word about the Novice. Congratulations.
Thank you guys.